I believe that's an actual Trump quote, by the way.
I'm sure.
I'm like, I don't think that's true. All right, let's go on. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Dynasty Tradecast. This week brought to you by mybookie.ag. As always, I'm your host, Eric Bertzloff, better known on Twitter as @DynastyTrades, joined by my co-host today, Nathan Powell, a man who's been engaged for one whole week. What's up, Nathan?
Okay, so this is going to be a topic every week. Like, everyone's sick of my engagement by now. But yes, what's
up? Is Miriam sick of your engagement already?
That would be an issue. That would be an issue. No, we went to Disney this weekend, and so that was fun.
Dude, if you follow you for Nate Dogg Walks the Dog, you also get some Disney snaps. It's legit, dude.
Oh, there you go.
and Pal FF on Snapchat, it's the real deal.
There you go. Maybe I'll go from 12 to 14 followers on Snapchat.
How did you do this week in fantasy? It was playoff week, Nathan, so I assumed you did really well in all the toilet bowls.
Well, toilet bowls actually not great. I think I won like one of my toilet bowl games, but the real thing is that this time of year reminds me that all of my best teams are best ball teams. So I have like three teams left right now, and I think two of them are losing right now. So my best ball teams are looking really good, and they're first, second, third in that range. Even my listener league team for Tradecast, that team stinks and is somehow in fourth place entering this week. So I only do best ball. I need to quit all my normal leagues and just best ball it up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a better strategy for the way you play Dynasty. That would be sad, though. But at least you give good content. I mean, you don't have to be a good player to teach well.
To actually relate this to content somewhat, the difference between best ball and seasonal for me is best ball is about player evaluation. It's about building a roster, whereas seasonal is more about building a lineup. And I think that there's more skill involved in building a team rather than a lineup.
All right, agree to disagree. I like making actual decisions each week personally. So, but yeah, I would just like to toot my own horn here. Say I'm in 5 playoffs. Made it to the semis in 5, and I'm now out in all except 1, which is technically I'm in the finals of that. So everyone I was in the semis just blaze of glory. One team put up 60 points. It was cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, dude, this week was just awful. Okay, well, before we talk about what an awful, no good, bad week it is, let's tell you about who's bringing us to you, and that's the RotoViz Radio Network and our 10 shows on this network. You can join our Patreon. By doing so, you'll gain exclusive access to RotoViz Live, our weekly Sunday video show answering all of your fantasy questions. And even though the regular season is still wrapping up, there's DFS discussions there. So there's still some content to be had. Patronships start at just $5 per month and provide exclusive access to RotoViz Live. That's 4 shows per month on top of 40 podcasts for just $5. Become a RotoViz Radio patron and join that exclusive community of listeners, access premium content, do your part in helping the network to grow and continue to produce high-quality, industry-leading programming.
Speaking of exclusives, as a loyal podcast listener, you get 30% off RotoViz NFL Pass right now. It's available through the NFL Podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast. The season is almost over, but that doesn't matter. You still need a RotoViz Pass, gain unlimited access to all of our NFL content and tools, so you get amazing value and support the podcast network. Once again, that's rotoviz.com/podcast.
See, what we need to convince them to do, Nathan, is get us on there once the season's over and we can do Sunday shows about Dynasty. I think that's legit.
Knowing you two fathers having any sort of commitment to a day is a bad idea.
That's valid. Probably valid. But we're here. I mean, we're always here on Tuesday. It's a grab bag of who's here, That's how it goes. Okay, well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this week was pretty lame for Dynasty. If you survived, or actually fantasy in general, if you survived, kudos to you. There was terrible injuries in the form of Lamar, Keenan Allen. There's one more that I feel like I'm missing here that got you a big furry goose egg. Aaron Jones, just not great. So Nathan, I guess let's then talk about a player that we touched on last week that's not injury related, but the next player that we talk about will be, and that is Derrick Henry. Another fantastic week from Derrick Henry. Ran the ball 33 times, Nathan, 33. I believe that is a lot. If Dan was here, he would probably say hashtag a lot. And he got 170 yards and 2 TDs on that. So I guess, what is your take on Derrick Henry? I think last week, all of us were on board with it's time to sell Derrick Henry. Is this just a widening of the window to maybe if you have a trade deadline through right now that after the season's over, you can then go and shop him?
For the most part, I think it's a sell window. But as some may know, I was born a Derrick Henry believer, a
That
Derrick
is
Henry
true.
truther,
You've been
and
quiet recently about that.
because he's been terrible. And so, but as is the case when these type of things happen, it's like, maybe he's as good as I thought he was. I mean,
you got Tyler Boyd and Tyreek right, so
there we
maybe
go.
you got Henry right too, with all of Dynasty Twitter as well.
And the clear difference between like hitting on a late breakout wide receiver and a late breakout running back is that I think that the workload is so much more of a factor with the running back that it's like, okay, the team has to believe in the guy. They have to give him the touches. And the last 2 weeks, particularly this week with the 33 carries, they believe in him right now. And whether that's going to carry through to next season, whether they're going to invest at another running back in the draft or the free agency, I don't know. But I tend to lean towards this widens the window more than me thinking, okay, it's still time to buy. But there is a part of me that thinks, well, like let's not close the book on Henry like too quickly. Like he might actually be good.
Well, I mean, and that's a fair question of is he good? I mean, the problem here is this volume is, I mean, maybe if there's a dude in the league that is physically built for this volume, he might be the guy, but this volume is not sustainable long term. And so, I mean, if he's able to if he's getting 20 carries and has somebody to split the carries with, but I mean, this was clear that they just want to ride him into the ground. So I don't know. I mean, I'm still on board with selling him. And I as I mentioned at the top of this, I think this is the window that is the dump Derrick Henry, and his value is going to be inflated from this, especially if he has one more good game at the end of here and wins somebody, as outrageously as it may sound, their dynasty championship.
Yeah, that's certainly a fair prospect. Let's move on to another player who may be worth a dumping, and that's Damian Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, they lost Kareem Hunt a few weeks ago. They had Spencer Ware out for their game this week. And so in steps Damian Williams, who, got the bulk of the work, 6 catches for 74 receiving yards, 10 rushes for 49, and 2 touchdowns. Is there any prospect of Williams being a contributor in 2019, or is this a pure end-of-season play?
I mean, if you watch this game, he looked like a man possessed. He was just trucking this defense. Everybody was struggling to take him down. To me, he looked kind of real dealish, as crazy as that may sound. And with like the uncertainty in Kansas City, I mean, okay, let's think about how this plays out. Probably right is okay in Kansas City. Kareem Hunt's certainly not coming back, so now they have Ware and Williams. They'll probably draft somebody.
Ware's a free agent for what it's worth.
Yeah, and so they're probably going to draft somebody. But is that person going to take over immediately, or can Williams actually keep a share in this offense if he performs well down the stretch here? And I think so. And I think he's showing that he can be a valuable asset in the receiving game too for dump off passes. I mean, this is I don't know volume wise if he's capable of sustaining this, but if he's a 50% share, the price tag right now looks real good. Where if I'm able to going out and buying Damian Williams, if you're capable of doing so for like a third, strikes me as being a real good deal.
Yeah, I think that, obviously a week or two ago, Damian Williams didn't have roster value. I think that now he has roster value. And some people will even say he has trade value. I'm not going out and buying Williams quite yet. Maybe if it's a late third, I'm like, okay, might as well try it with that. But I think for the most part, if you can get anything in return for Williams right now, it's a move I'd be willing to make, because with the type of player that he is, it's so very infrequently is it that this player ends up being, a contributor for multiple years, or even a contributor the following year after he has this little blip because of injuries and suspensions and things like that. So,
well, and to be fair, all I'm saying is, if a third round valuation, do I think he has some value next year if he contributes here? I think so. Now I agree. Like it's his 5th year in the league. It's probably not going to happen for him. We saw Alex Collins come up, look amazing, and fizzle again. And he had actual draft pedigree. This is somebody. I mean, I do not think there's long-term dynasty value here, but I do think that he's a player that if you're doing a 0 RB strategy, this is a very cheap 0 RB to keep on your roster, and is likely one injury away next year from having the opportunity to be the bell cow again.
Yeah, I think it might take a little bit more than that, but it's certainly within the range of outcomes. All right, let's move on to another Williams, and that is of the Mike variety. Yes, there's been many Mike Williams, but this is the most current Mike Williams.
There's actually another D. Williams that ran the football for.
Oh yeah, Darrell Williams, yeah.
Darrell Williams as well. This is just a Williams-filled show. Go on. I'm sorry.
Mike Williams, as everyone knows, I am the draft capital guy of the planet, and so I was screaming, "Why is everyone dumping Mike Williams so cheaply this offseason?" You know, he had one injury-riddled rookie season. He was a top 10, top 12 draft pick. I forgot exactly where he went, but top 10, I'm pretty sure. I think it was 7th. Anyways, so there was plenty of reasons to buy this offseason, and you could say that year 2 has been a mixed bag. He's had some big games. I like his 7 catch, 76, two touchdowns, plus the rushing touchdown. So 3 touchdowns this past week. But he hasn't even eclipsed 100 receiving yards this year, so not exactly a breakout second year. So do you see him as just an inconsistent play, a guy who might be good in best ball, or do you see him as a guy that's flashed enough this year that maybe he ends up being the prototypical from years past year 3 breakout?
I think we could be staring at a year 3 breakout here. He's certainly the arrows trending up with him, and with Keenan out, we might get a better look at him. But I think him and Keenan as a 1-2 punch is an interesting, and I think that's ultimately what the Chargers had in mind when they drafted him at 7 overall. So he's a player that I'm not sure will ever be a wide receiver 1, will ever have that like upside of being like, I don't know, like Mike Evans or something crazy like that in the top tier of dynasty. But he is a player that I think will continue to have value, and he's just a giant dude. And Phillip Rivers is good, so it's and that's a great take. That's like a Dan take there. He's a giant dude, and Phillip Rivers is good. As I said it, I was like, that is something Dan would say. But he is a player that strikes me as having a real chance at breakout, and he did come from Clemson. Like he's got pedigree. He's drafted in the first round, comes from a great college. And he's going into his 3rd year and has flashed in his first 2. I'm okay with it, but I think the price tag is going to get expensive. Let me toss it back to you, Nathan, and ask you what that price tag right now is for Williams.
I mean, it depends on what you qualify as expensive. I don't think he's that much more expensive than he was the day he got drafted. I don't think he's any more expensive. I mean, he's probably cheaper than when he got drafted in the 105, 106 range of rookie drafts. I mean,
no, I agree with that for sure. I mean, I think that his value has depressed because he's not just studding out here.
Yeah, and for me, the way I value him, I would say I value him in like the 107 to 109 range. And I think that he's a high upside play at that price point. But as far as just, let's say I have Mike Williams on my team right now, what am I looking at from him? I think he's a inconsistent play at best. Until he proves that he's going to be getting the targets on a consistent basis. He has so many sub-5 target games this year that you can't really rely on that production in a seasonal league. So
let me just toss out some. I'm sorry, finish that thought.
I like him as a talent. And I think he's going to be a good football player, but I think that in fantasy there is some caution to be had, at least until he proves that he's going to be a consistent producer.
Yeah, I mean his value is relatively depressed at the end of the 6th round in startups. I mean, as crazy as this sounds, Gronk is right there as well. But guys like Anthony Miller, Marlon Mack, Doug Baldwin, Royce Freeman, Lamar Miller are all players around him. So I don't know. I mean, out of those players, with the exception of Gronk, if he doesn't retire, the upside I think is trending with Mike Williams in that location.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't draft Gronk there either, but you know.
No, I mean that puts him in my eyes as kind of, you mentioned, a late 1st round valuation. I think that's probably close to right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the player that I just mentioned. Actually, if I was better at this, I would have pivoted, as I mentioned, Marlon Mack. But Marlon Mack is a man possessed, and he's flashed, and he flashed again this past week. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I can work on getting them. But he was one of the beacons of hope on my dynasty roster this week. But Nathan, I guess, what are you doing with Mack? It looks like he's a lock for right around 15 carries a week. And with those 15 carries, he seems very capable of producing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been chasing the Indy running back with Naheem Hines and Jordan Wilkins and Mack, of course, as well. And the play has been a bit inconsistent by all of them. And I think Mack is the best talent of the 3 and the guy who has the quote-unquote workhorse ability of the 3. I just don't really know what to do with him because he has these big games. So people who have him currently aren't going to be like selling him for an early to mid second. They're going to want that first round price tag for him, I would think.
Yeah, and as a Marlon Mack owner in many places, I will attest to that statement.
Yeah, and I don't think that I don't think he's that much better than Hines and Wilkins to be okay. I'm going to invest that first round capital in him. I'd just be a bit wary of it, because he's going to be another guy who's going to be an inconsistent producer. He's got 300-yard games and then a few good ones and a couple clunkers as well. So Mac, he's had an okay year, but he's raised more questions than answers here with just inconsistent play.
Yeah, I mean he's like the type of player that I do like because he's like the epitome of like a end of RB2 flex player. But I think I've never, as a player as an owner who has him many times, I rarely feel bad about sticking him in my lineup. And I don't think the dynasty community is really caught up to his valuation just because of the inconsistencies. And I think we're very questionable about the Indy backfield because we're like, is this the answer that they finally needed? Or are they finally going to start running him into the ground? I mean, he got 27 carries this last week. So maybe if he keeps getting that type of push, but I think he got 12 the week before. So he's been kind of all over the place on the number of carries. So maybe if anything, he's a game script dependent running back. And in this game, they just happen to be running it down Dallas's throat. So I don't know. For me, I think I'm going to go buy Mac once my trade deadlines are done. If it is like a late first valuation, second round valuation, I don't think a second's getting it done. But he is a player that, like, I don't know, maybe the Mac owners are going to be high on him like me. But he's a player that I actually kind of really like.
I think that he's a player, and I did say that a lot of Mac owners will be hesitant to sell because of the big games. But I also think he's the type of player that when he has like a 7 carry for 36-yard game, then that's a prime time to buy. The value fluctuates more on that value level of player to where when you have the bad game, the people start to worry. They start to say, maybe I will accept this offer that I wouldn't have accepted two weeks ago. So certainly if you're going to buy him, and we say this for every player, but certainly with this level of player, I would say never buy him after the big game. Always wait for the clunker because a clunker will move a lower valued player's value more so than a top end player.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at his carries throughout the season, he has, I mean, he's been pretty consistent in double digits. I think there was only one game against the Jags. It was that 0-6 game where he only got under 10. So anytime he's healthy, he seems to be getting over 10 carries, and that has value. And I don't see him going anywhere. I don't see the Colts being like, no, thank you. You've consistently run the ball over 100 yards for us this season. Or you've done it a couple times. We'll just go ahead and pass on you, you 22-year-old. I think he's got several more years there before we really know what we have in Marlon Mack. So it seems like a low floor, high ceiling type player to me.
Yep.
Okay. Let me go ahead and pivot. This is going to be the worst pivot of all time, but I'm going to tell it's going to be the best product of all time. I'm going to tell you guys about our sponsor, and that is mybookie.ag. It's the time of the year where you might be out of the fantasy playoffs. As I mentioned before, I'm out of most of them now as well. That if you are out of the fantasy playoffs and you want to have a little bit of action, it's a great time to check out mybookie.ag. These guys, we've been telling you about them all year long. So if you are the kind of guy that likes to bet a little and win a lot, like bet numbers on roulette, you can play a big parlay. And that's a good way to start. Maybe put like $5 on a big parlay, or put $100 on a parlay, 3 teams, and turn it into $600. $5 will turn it into, $30. That's good math right there on the fly. And if you don't want to bet on football, if you're tired of football, if you're like, I'm out of the playoffs, I'm done, you can bet on college basketball. You can bet on the bowl games. You can bet on the NBA. You can bet on NHL. You can bet on esports. And as I always say, Trump as well. You could vote on him, which is always good. Depending on any side of the aisle can vote on or bet on that. MyBookie is the one bet I know you'll be happy with all year, and we recommend these guys because we really do trust them. Like I said, MyBookie's been sponsoring us for over a year at this point. MyBookie has been in business for years, and they've got great online reviews, and their mobile site is easy. So if you sign up for MyBookie this week, we'll give you a 50% deposit bonus to jumpstart your bankroll. It's a great way to bank even more money if you are out of the playoffs. You can also follow at MyBookie on Twitter. They personally respond to every mention in DM. Not to mention they give away money. They give away $10,000 in free money to their followers this football season, and you'll be the first to know as soon as new odds and props are posted. Don't miss out on one of the best weeks to bet on sports this year. Log on to my bookie right now and use promo code RotoViz to get a 50% deposit bonus. That's promo code RotoViz, ROTOVIZ. You play, you win, you get paid.
Alrighty, we're going to do a little segment called Rookie Redo. This time of year, maybe even a little bit earlier, a lot of people do a redo of a rookie draft, and I think that we try and avoid what everyone else is doing on podcasts. So we do what they do, but we just change it a little bit. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be comparing players at the same position. We're going to take one guy who has outperformed their ADP, outperformed their initial rookie draft value, and someone who's either disappointed or is pretty much stayed at the same value. So basically comparing a guy who has risen versus a guy who has fallen. And we're going to start off with Josh Allen or Josh Rosen. Like I always say, it doesn't really matter with this particular scenario, but we're going to assume Superflex. What are your thoughts on these two, Eric?
Yeah, I don't know. They both had interesting seasons. Josh Allen's legs were really, really impressive. I think I'm going to go with Rosen just because I think he's more of a traditional passer, and he is in, despite it being a terrible organization this year, a better organization all around. The Bills have shown the inability to get their heads screwed on correctly and make good, rational decisions for a team that's terrible. So I don't see that getting better in the future, and for that reason, I'll take Rosen out of those.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked me this 6 months ago, I would have said Rosen, not even close, bank it, take it to the bank, $1 million. I'm not so sure anymore. I know that Josh Allen may not be the best quote-unquote football player or the better football player in this scenario, but Rosen hasn't played well. He's played on an awful football team, the team that I predicted would have the number one pick. That hasn't exactly gone that way, but they've been very bad. So I think if I had to take one, it would be Rosen, but I don't think it's that far-fetched to say go with Allen, go with the guy who is, had these huge games in his rookie year. Early season or early career success, rookie season success can show, okay, this is what's going to be happening over the long haul. Now, maybe that the rushing success isn't as positive of an indicator because it's inconsistent year to year or even week to week. But I do think that let's put it this way. If I had Rosen, I'd be trying to sell him for Allen and plus something, especially in Superflex right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Allen just seems like the player that's probably not the best at actual football and is good at fantasy football. And that's where,
but we don't play actual football. We play fantasy football.
No, but we play dynasty fantasy football where if you're actually bad at football, like for redraft next year, sure. But for 2 years from now, Allen might not be in the league. I mean, we redraft Tyrod is great. Dynasty Tyrod's not, unfortunately, because he's just not going to keep a job. So it's kind of the same situation for me that I guess I'll go with the guy who I think is going to be in the league longer. And I don't think there's that much discrepancy between the two of them. They both put up in the ballpark of the same amount of points this year.
Did they?
Yeah, I think they were 40 points off of each other. Okay. Looking at it right now, in one of my leagues, Allen had, and this
okay, but look, that's 18 points per game versus 11 points per game.
Yeah, and fair. I can't disagree with that. It is that, but I'm just saying I think that Rosen's on a really bad football team this year. So I'm willing to wait him out.
Alrighty, let's go on to our next one. It's going to be Philip Lindsay, the guy who has skyrocketed from undrafted free agent to superstar, or Kerryon Johnson, a guy who he's had a good rookie season, but I mean he hasn't lit the world on fire either.
Yeah, I think it's time for hat eating time here, or at least admitting that I made a bad trade in one of my leagues. That I traded Philip Lindsay in a first for Leonard Fournette that I thought was a dream trade. I thought that was the greatest trade ever. And now I am just early on in the season, I thought I had sold high and was good to go. Man, it's hat eating time. I think I made a bad decision because I'm not even sure I straight up want to do that deal, even with the first out of it. Yeah, Lindsay seems to be the real deal. I saw in Denver, he was headlining the TV guide. It was Philip Lindsay takes on I forget who they played this week, but the Bengals. Oh, no, who did they play this week? I forget. But they take on. It's Philip Lindsay was the headliner. I was like, man, that team has no talent. But yeah, I mean, but Lindsey on a team that really doesn't have the ability to move the football has been electric this year. And I don't think there's any denying that. He put all the Royce Freeman truthers in a sad place this year. So Kerryon has looked great too. I think it's unfair to say he's had a mediocre year. I think when he's been on the field, he's been fabulous. I just think that the problem is he was injured. So if there is like a lull in his valuation, I'm more than happy to go purchase him. I think he is the bell cow in Detroit moving forward. But I will give I think that Philip Lindsay has superstar potential. I think Kerryon Johnson is going to be a very good running back moving forward.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to take Lindsay here just because his rushing success in year one, guys like that don't just go away. I think that he is the type of player that's going to be the RB1 in Denver. I'm not scared of Royce Freeman there, and so I think that Lindsay, maybe he's a sell in the offseason, but I do think I would prefer him between these two running backs long term.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. He's been beating out the guy with draft capital. I mean, the guy was drafted in the third round. The guy in the third round's been at the bottom end of his timeshare, and it's only been dissipating further as the year goes on. So, yeah, I mean, Lindsay seems to have. I mean, the undrafted free agent beating out the third rounder it happens very, very rarely.
All right, let's move on to our next one. It's Ronald Jones or Josh Adams.
Man, I didn't even know Josh Adams was a rookie this year. That's how bad I am at this. I thought he was like a journeyman guy. God, I'll take Jones and just hope he shows up, and I'll just hang my hat on draft capital there. But that feels gross. I don't think Josh Allen's anything but a stopgap right now for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of circumstance where he got the opportunity there.
But isn't this outrageous? We're comparing these two with the way they were drafted, like in the offseason. This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
I guess Lindsay's the same way. I mean, this is absurd that those two are in the same sentence.
Yeah, but it certainly makes more sense that like Ronald Jones. I mean, Lindsay has been so good that he's up there at the top, rather than Ronald Jones has been so bad that he's down here with a guy who's had like 2 good games. And usually, if you're an undrafted free agent, you have to have more than just 2 good games to have any sort of dynasty value. So, with Jones, I'm holding out hope that he's in a really good offense and that eventually it becomes the RB1 there. Certainly within the range of outcomes that he's just Bishop Sankey.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. Is like there's a decent chance that we have a Bishop Sankey on our hands here, and we're the entire dynasty community is going down with the ship, unfortunately.
They're not though. Like everyone is basically already calling Ronald Jones Bishop Sankey, which is fine because he's basically been that bad this year.
Yeah.
But I'm on the off chance that he isn't. I'm going to be buying on the very cheap this path.
Let's ask the question: what is Ronald Jones' valuation right now? A 3rd round draft pick?
I offered 2/3, and they said that was an awful offer. So
what? No, that's not an offer. If I was the Ronald Jones owner and I got 2/3 offered to me, I mean, I probably wouldn't take it because I would be bitter that I drafted him in the 1st round. But I mean, it's a fair offer. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't either. I think that he's maybe like 2/3 and a 4th, a late 2nd and a 4th, or something like that. Like, I don't think you can get anything more than like the 208 for him.
Man, Dynasty's such a funny game. It really is. Like just how quickly you can fizzle out.
All right. Next one, go to the wide receiver position. Robert Foster, who has had a breakout in his rookie season with Buffalo, or James Washington, who has played rather poorly in Pittsburgh. He had like 1 big catch against New England this past week, but other than that, he has had a very quiet rookie season. So are you taking the undrafted guy who has flashed or the guy who has played the red shirt?
Yeah, I hung my hat on this last week, and he did it again this upcoming week, this week here, where he had another 5 targets, 4 receptions, and over 100 yards on a TD. He's just a low volume guy that has flashed thus far. And for Foster, if I can get James White for him or James Washington, I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. I do not believe, and I will continue to say until I am wrong and have to eat my hat, that I do not believe that Mr. Foster is going to happen. And I think James Washington is starting to get back on the field, is starting to show that he can do this, and is starting to gain trust. So he's a guy that I think that as a Pittsburgh number 3, or if there is an injury, a Pittsburgh number 2, he's got the pedigree. He has looked great. I have not given up on Washington. I haven't seen anything other than that kind of abysmal drop that he had that it makes me think anything other than what we thought at the beginning of the season when we were drafting him in the early second. Nobody thought he was going to have impact this year.
Yeah, I don't think that we've seen quite enough to make the swap here from undrafted free agent to, second or third round guy wherever Washington was picked. But I think we're getting close. Like, I think this is a legitimate conversation, especially those who, just think, okay, the guy has this early career production that's going to continue. So, yeah, I think it's close, but I'll lean Washington for the upside purposes, but I think it's close.
All right. There's been, I mean, are you saying, because you don't think that James Washington's valuation has fallen at all?
It has. It has.
You think so? Okay, well then maybe
I think that when he got drafted in Pittsburgh, he ended up falling into that like 111 to like 203 range.
Yes.
And certainly his value isn't still there. It's like, I would say it's like the 202 to like 206 range.
Okay, I mean, if I can get him at that 206 valuation right now, I'm pretty happy with that. I think Washington's an off-season buy. I really don't have that much concern about it. But yeah, Foster seems like a pretty easy sell to me right now, given his volume. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll turn out to be amazing. And I mean, he's certainly got the athletics for it, but I don't know. And again, Bill's organization, no thank you.
All righty, next one. Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Michael Gallup?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go MVS here. Although even with St. Brown coming on, I think Cobb's out next year, and I think that one of these guys is going to solidify themselves. I don't know. This is going to be maybe a controversial take, but I will take MVS. I have not seen anything from Gallup that I like, and I don't think the Cowboys have either. I think they went out and paid a fortune for Amari Cooper to allow Gallup to just try to be that second or third guy, and he's been okay. He's been okay.
But he's been so much better since the Cooper trade that he obviously, NFL player ends up getting better as his rookie season goes on. But also the fact that the pressure has been taken off him. He's now the number 2. And I think that he's the long-term number 2 in that offense. I'm not so sure that Valdes-Scantling has that locked-in role because he's the later round draft pick, because there's so much competition in Green Bay. So for me, I'm taking Gallup because the draft capital, and I think that it's more of a secure role long-term.
Yeah, I mean, did he solidify anything last week? I feel like he didn't do anything last week. Gallup.
I didn't say he did it last week. I'm saying that he's been playing better since the trade.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, what I've seen from MVS, I really, Scantling seems like he has a lot of upside. And there was definitely a discussion on this podcast when he strung a couple weeks together about what his valuation was, and we were tossing out late first round pick valuations.
For Scantling, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Which is where Gallup was to begin with. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like they've caught up with each other. So I'll gamble on Scantling, new coach, and Green Bay personally. And also, we're still on Jamon Moore watch. Where is he? R.I.P. Your second round picks.
All right. Our last one, we're going to go to the tight end position. Always a tough one to evaluate in the rookie season. But we'll go with Mark Andrews, guy who has shown some flashes, has played well. Comparatively for a rookie, or Mike Gesicki, who has all but been, nowhere.
I don't know. I mean, we're evaluating rookie tight ends, and this is where just pump your brakes if you're a listener and you're freaking out about your end of the first round, beginning of the second round tight end not panning out. If you don't think about this feeling right now. If you don't like this feeling, it's probably not very good of you to draft a tight end in the first round, because neither of these guys have been spectacular. I mean, Andrews has put up, I'm looking at it right now, it looks like he's put up double digit points once in a PPR league. He's got 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. I mean, he literally doesn't have 4 receptions this year. And Gesicki's the same way. Again, I don't see how I'm going to compare Andrews to Gesicki. I mean, Hayden Hurst, now that's where the butter is, Nathan. That's the real guy. But no, for real, I think I'm still gonna hang out with Gesicki. I'll still take him. I'm fine. You paid a late first, early second for him. Just stick with him.
Yeah, I'll stick with Gesicki as well. I mean, he entered the NFL as a raw, receiving tight end type, and almost always those guys end up having to spend their rookie years learning how to block, learning the playbook, and all those things. And that's what he's had to do in Miami. And part of the reason why he hasn't played well, because he's adjusting to basically a new position, because he probably didn't have to block that much in college. So Yeah, Mike Gesicki. I mean, honestly, I'm not excited about anyone from this class other than maybe like an Ian Thomas as a late round guy and
What
startup.
about like a Will Disley?
No, he's not a thing. I think that Goddard is okay, but he's stuck with Ertz. So I mean, I think that if there's a tight end that I'm excited about for his current value in this class, it's Ian Thomas. But Gesicki could be a decent like buy super low. But there's also people aren't. I mean, it happens sometimes, but the guys you drafted in that early second, mid second rookie drafts, you're not really trying to dump them for third, fourth round picks the next year.
Yeah, and that's really the bottom line is like that. And the hype train for tight ends year over year is in the off season where it's just go time for whatever that tight end who's like gonna happen is gonna happen, and that's like that's the time where everybody will freak out, and then the hype will build on hype on hype on hype, and then somebody will be worth a first round draft pick that didn't do crap this year. So I don't know. Again, it's one of these things where if you've got short rosters, don't draft tight ends in the early rounds because you're going to have to hold on to them. Like Gesicki has not flopped. He hasn't had a chance yet. He's, as Nathan said, learning a new position. This is dynasty tight ends. If you don't like it, don't draft them.
Kadoosh.
All right. Well, Nathan's already said kadoosh, but I will remind the listeners that brings us to the end of our show. I feel like when Dan's not here, I'd lecture a little bit more, Nathan. What do you think?
I have no idea.
Okay. You're like, I don't even listen. Nathan's got a box of Captain Crunch behind him. I've got a ton of Amazon boxes because I'm in Santa's workshop at my house. And yeah, so we both got boxes behind us, I guess is what I'm getting at. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap the show. I don't know where I'm going with this. So make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review for us on our channel, our individual channel, and on the RotoViz radio channel. Those are always appreciated. We read each one of those, and we really enjoy it. Make sure you check out our sister and brother shows on the RotoViz radio network. And I guess, Nathan, for myself and you and Dan, anything else, or do you want to catch up with them next week?
Kadoosh, next. I guess the one thing we should tell you guys is there's a slight chance we don't have a show next week. If we do, it'll be later in the week.
Yeah, Christmas, baby. Yeah, I mean, well, with Christmas being the day we come out, I do not know that that's going to happen, but maybe later in the week. We shall see. I think we're all going to be traveling for it, so it might just be a week off. Apologies ahead of time if that's the case. Enjoy your family. Stop listening to us babble about fantasy football.
And if it is a week off, sorry, Colm, that we told you a month ago that we'd have a show.
All right. On that note, we are out of here. Nathan, what do you say?
Kadoosh.
All right, we're out. And it's in the call.
Oh, Jesus. I forgot I'm